Course, to discuss about North Korea's missile launch. It's, of course, Dr. Robert Winstanley Chester. He's a researcher fellow at Australian National University and geographer on environmental histories and management of North Korea. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this time. Well,
good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, the North Korean, side does appear to be on, personal war path with the U.S. at the moment. We heard the North Korean ambassador saying to the United Nations that what it has been doing has been gift packages to the United States.
I'm afraid you'll have to repeat the last question.
All right, I said that the North Korean state does appear to be on a personal war path with the U.S. Its ambassador said that what it has been doing has been packages to the U.S.
I'm afraid Skype is not being very friendly in between Canberra in Australia and Lagos in Nigeria this evening.
Okay, well, let me try and ask again if you can hear me. Well, what do you make of the global threat posed by North Korea's, launches?
If you just asked me what you thought of the threat of North Korea's global launches, I think that North Korea is obviously rapidly developing its nuclear capacity in a way that other people, or the wider globe, haven't really anticipated, or haven't anticipated the speed. I don't think they anticipated either the development in their missile capabilities. However, I personally still believe that North Korea is some way away from launching or being able to launch a intercontinental ballistic missile or another missile at the range it suggests it might be capable of. Not to say that it wouldn't be capable of it in the future. North Korea has always found it seems difficult to deal with the process or the machining of multi-stage rockets and the process of re-entry, as well as the capabilities of placing a warhead on a missile. That's not to say that that they won't be capable in the future. And it's not to say that the fact that they have demonstrated the capability of launching of testing a hydrogen bomb is not a threat to regional neighbors such as Japan and South Korea. The thought of North Korea using that missile in anything other than the last-ditch effort at self-defense on the United States, though, I think is extraordinary, because one of the reasons for the development over many decades of this technology and this capability is to basically sustain the regime and act as a sort of security for the regime against an asymmetrically enormously more powerful foe in the United States. And to actually use that weapon or that capability against the United States would result in North Korea's sure destruction, which I'm sure, as much as the regime might bluster or articulate in public, it well knows.
All right,
so,
Robert.
In a sense, I think we are some way away from that ultimate threat.
All right, Robert. Trump, as you and I know, is not towing the path of diplomacy. Is this the right way to deal with North Korea, knowing full well the dangers involved?
No, not entirely, because this serves North Korea's purpose. In a sense, North Korea appreciates and likes to have an enemy. If anybody reads North Korea's political narrative and the media produced by its newspapers, you will know that that North Korea already sees the United States as an interminably hostile nation. It's seen it that way since the Korean War in the early 1950s, and Trump coming out with his interesting tweets and provocative statements essentially demonstrates to North Korea that its enemy is as much as an enemy as it anticipates. You know, whether Trump has any option other than to sound and bluster like this, given his base in the United States and given what he must say in relation to the United States supporters and allies in Japan and South Korea, is another matter. In a sense, America has to sound like this. It has to make these statements because because otherwise it would seem as if it was not articulating what needed to be said.
All right. The Japanese government is goaded on at the moment to push for more sanctions against North Korea. But the question I want to ask you is, have sanctions, ever helped in trying to deal with North Korea?
To date, no. I mean, North Korea is already one of the most sanctioned regimes and governments on the planet, and it has been for some time. At the moment, it's an extraordinary long list of the things that of the items that you cannot ship or trade with North Korea, ranging from carpets, along obviously with nuclear weapons and all sorts of military technology, ranging to carpets over a certain size and value. Even fish and prawns are now sanctioned by the new sanctions regime that literally only came into force a few weeks ago. So North Korea has always managed to somehow find ways around whatever sanctions regime it has been under. It's always been an extraordinarily resourceful government and regime in finding a way through the most extraordinary economic and sort of political and environmental difficulties. So a new sanctions regime would have to be absolutely vicious in its application to have any real impact. Yeah.
All right. Now, over the years, as you and I know, diplomacy hasn't really worked. Trump's tough stance as well on North Korea isn't going to help as well, as we have seen the narratives. As someone who's been watching events, what do you think needs to be done really? How to deal with North Korea?
Well, I mean, diplomacy hasn't really been tried with North Korea since the 1990s, when the agreed framework under the Clinton government was tried, and at that time the United States engineered a sort of fuel for nuclear power swap with North Korea that ended up with the United States promising to offer light water reactors to North Korea. This, of course, failed when neither side could trust each other after the Bush government came into power. And after that, North Korea has been faced by economic catastrophe, environmental crisis, and the most important thing, I think, for North Korea has been the collapse of governments in Libya and Iraq, in the sense that it has given North Korea an example of what happens if you don't have a deterrent.
Right.
Nobody in the North Korean government wants to die in a ditch like Gaddafi, and nobody wants to be taunted when they get hung like
right.
Saddam Hussein.
Right.
So, excuse me.
Yes. All right, Robert. Well, just round off what you wanted to say very quickly.
So I would say that the diplomacy, I think we're a long way away from that, although essentially, given the North Korea's capacity now demonstrated for a nuclear capability and potentially intercontinental technology in the future, I would suggest that ultimately the only solution to this really is diplomatic in some way. But I don't think we have any of the right political leaders or situations in power now to bring it to via diplomacy. So perhaps the only solution is a solution the United States has thought of in the 1950s, which is containment.
All right. Robert Winstanley Chester of the Australian National University, thank you very much indeed.